Next on Tider Insider TV, Alabama and Florida meet this weekend in the regular season. The stage has changed, the players to some degree have changed, but the importance of the game has not changed. We'll preview the Tide and the Gators from A to Z. Also ahead, did the Alabama defense grow up some last weekend against Arkansas? We'll have all these stories and more. Tider Insider TV starts right now.
Go inside the Crimson Tide. Tider Insider TV with Rodney Orr and Gary Harris.
Had to change up that right now a little bit. Everybody's brother goes right now. You know, I had to put a little more emphasis on it. Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome into Tider Insider TV, presented by Buffalo Rock Diet Mountain Dew, our beverage of choice. This evening, alongside Rodney Orr from TiderInsider.com, I'm Gary Harris, and Rodney, we've got another jam-packed show. Our John Huddleston has got it loaded, so let's get right to it. And we start, of course, with Alabama and Florida. Now, if you've been living under a rock, you may not know that these two teams have had some history in recent years. In 2008, Alabama lost to Florida in the SEC championship game, ruining the Tide's perfect season, and the Gators went on to win the national championship. And then in 2009, both teams were undefeated. Alabama got its revenge, beating Florida, and the Tides climbed to a 13th national championship. This weekend, the two schools will meet in the regular season for the first time since '06. That game was in Gainesville. Coach Nick Saban says while the stage and players may have changed, his team's approach has not.
The names on the back of the jerseys change and the numbers change, but the standard never does. And that's a very challenging thing to get from a consistency standpoint, but it's certainly what we want with our team. I think our focus for our team needs to play their best football and learn what they need to do to continue to improve to be able to do that. We're playing a very, very good team. This is a great opportunity to show some of that improvement.
So no Georgia Dome. Instead, it's Bryant-Denny Stadium, 100,000 plus. It's not December. It will be October, early October. And the other big change is Alabama, not an underdog this time around. In fact, Rodney, the Tide has been installed as a 9-point favorite. Wow, it caught me off guard a little bit. Being the favorite, being at home, do you think Alabama will approach this game a little bit differently?
No, I don't think so, Gary. Again, I don't think you even pay attention to whether or not you're the favorite. Now, certainly the home field advantage does give you an edge. You know, in a game like this, I don't think there's any question.
Well, you know, the biggest change, there have been a lot of changes since last year. Alabama's lost 8 or 9 key defensive starters. You know, Florida's lost some personnel. But the biggest change, when you just look at the game, the first thing you notice, no Tim Tebow. He's gone. Instead, Florida has had to change their approach. John Brantley was supposed to be the guy, and granted, he's gotten a little bit better as the weeks have gone on, but early in the season, he struggled pretty much with everything.
He did. Had a really good game against Kentucky last week. Gary was 24-35 for 248 yards, had a touchdown pass, and, you know, had his best game of his career as a starter.
And because he has not played maybe as well as the Florida coaches had hoped, and because Florida's offense, regardless of what Urban Meyer says, is predicated somewhat on a quarterback being able to run, they have turned to Trey Burton, and a great athlete, tight end, and man, what a game he had against Kentucky. He went nuts.
Yeah, he did. He obviously had a great game, Gary. 6 touchdowns. Here you see the lone touchdown reception he had. He lined up at like 4 different positions: tight end, quarterback, running back. He was all over the field for Florida. And, you know, but when you look at it, and you mentioned about Brantley not having a very good start, you know, there's a lot of guys around him that started. The offensive line's kind of been in mumbo-jumbo a little bit. They've had some injuries. So it's not just been John Brantley. It's been the Florida offense as a whole.
Yeah, and they're starting to hit their stride.
Yeah.
So this is not the same Florida team, as you would expect, in week 1 that Alabama will see. They're coming off a 48-point performance.
Well, they had.
I'm shocked they scored 48 the way they've been playing.
And they had their best, 466 total yards. It was by far their best offensive performance of the year.
And as we mentioned, 6 touchdowns for the tight end / quarterback / receiver. So they're really starting to get it going. Now, injuries are always a factor in a big game like this. Jeff Demps, you know, Meyer said yesterday he expects him to play. Now, Rainey's not injured, but he's been in trouble. He's not making the trip. Marcel Darius dinged an ankle against Arkansas. He is expected to play, but you wonder, we saw him limping around against the Hogs. You know, with Rainey already out, if Jeff Demps doesn't play, that would surely affect Florida, but you gotta think he's going to go.
I'd be very surprised if Jeff Demps isn't close to 100% ready to go. Gary, to be quite honest with you. He played against Kentucky. He only carried the ball 8 times, but still, the times I saw him, he looked good. Running the ball didn't show any ill effects. Now, the thing about Florida that you have to look at is their offensive line. Mike Pouncey, the center, was injured. Again, he looks like he'll be okay, but when you're a big guy and you have to put that kind of pressure on an injured foot, injured ankle, certainly does not bode well. But also, one of their other top offensive linemen, Carl Johnson, was injured during the game, lower leg injury. So, we'll see how those injuries pan out.
All right, we're going to stop looking ahead for just a moment and look back at this past weekend. Last Saturday, Ryan Mallett and the Arkansas Razorbacks, they lived up to their, the reputation that they have for being able to throw the football. They gave the Tide secondary all they could handle and then some. But once again, Alabama's defense held strong. They made some adjustments at halftime, really played a lot better in the second half, and learned a lot in that narrow 24-20 victory over the Razorbacks.
Here's what you're capable of doing when you do things correctly. Here's what happens when you don't. And I think that, with young players, maybe this is a great lesson for them to learn from, and they become more aware, more conscious of the discipline it takes to do things correctly against good players.
Rodney, that first half defensively, secondary-wise for Alabama was, and I know it wasn't all their fault, they weren't getting any pressure either, but it was ugly. I mean, not only it wasn't like guys were getting beat. Guys for Arkansas were just not getting covered. I mean, they looked really confused. Fortunately, as we mentioned, the second half played a ton of it.
Yeah, they did. Mallett threw for 250 in the first half. Gary only 107 in the second half. Now, part of that, Nick Saban said earlier in the week last week that it was going to take a team effort. What he meant by that was that the Alabama offense had to control the ball. You remember in the second half, Alabama possessed the ball, the time of possession, over 8 minutes, almost 9 minutes more than what Arkansas had the ball. So they kept Mallett on the sidelines. They produced on offense, scored 10 points in the fourth quarter, and ended up winning the game because of those facts.
And Rodney, we've talked a lot about how young that secondary is. They had to have grown up some.
Oh, absolutely. I think when you watch, as a fourth quarter, it just appeared that the coverage was much better. And as you mentioned, Gary, coverage is going to be a lot better, especially when you have some pressure. And Alabama got pressure. They went to a more aggressive defense, and Mallett got rattled. And we know that Ryan Mallett has a history. When he gets rattled, sometimes he comes unglued, and he threw some errant passes.
He certainly didn't play as well in the second half. If he had they would have won the game. But Alabama did what it had to do. Well, coming up next on TITV, Rodney will tell us about some of the top recruits that are going to be in town for this big game this weekend against Florida. And still to come later in the program, we'll make our predictions for the Tide and the Gators. Will Alabama move to 5-0? What do we think? You'll find out. Also, we'll get to your phone calls and answer your emails. 205-348-WVUA is the phone number. That's 348-9882. Stay tuned. You're watching the show that takes you inside the Crimson Tide, Tider Insider Television. All right, each week I like to talk to you about one of my favorite places to eat in Tuscaloosa, Nuke's Express Cafe, 205 University Boulevard East, just up from the UA campus, open for lunch and dinner 7 days a week. It is terrific. Whether it's an oven-toasted sandwich, a California-style pizza, or a hand-tossed salad, or maybe one of those great soups, everything, and I mean everything, is made with fresh ingredients. They prepare it right there on site. They've got a beer and wine menu. They'll take care of all your catering needs. Call them 758-2455 for that, and a terrific dessert menu featuring cakes, brownies, and Rice Krispie treats. You go there once, you'll go there often. I promise you that. Nuke's Express Cafe in Tuscaloosa. All right, Rodney, when you've got a big football game, and I mean really a big football game, the -- 1 team in the country, the -- 7 team in the country, and you're hosting that game, you can expect a lot of top recruits, some of which will be on official visits.
Well, Gary, this could be one of the bigger weekends Alabama's had in quite some time. Several guys expected on official visits. When you look at it, D. Hart, the great running back out of the state of Florida, along with his teammate Haseen Clinton-Dix down at Orlando, Dr. Phillips, they're coming in for official visits. Of course, as we know, Haseen Clinton-Dix is committed to Alabama, but he is kind of looking around at some other schools. D. Hart, Michigan, Alabama, Auburn, probably his top three. You look down in the state of Florida, they also have the tight end, Nick O'Leary, a tremendous player, one of the top tight ends in the country. He's coming in on an official visit. Some think Florida State's the team to beat there. His teammate, linebacker Kurt Magic's also coming in. So it's going to be a big weekend, Gary. Also, several guys coming in on unofficial visits. Antonio Richardson, the great offensive lineman from Nashville, Innsworth, spoke to his dad, who said they're planning to come on an unofficial visit. So it's going to be a packed house in terms of top prospects.
You know, Richardson has it's been thought he's a Tennessee lean. Obviously, for Tennessee, he's a priority. But even if at some point Dooley gets it turned around there, I mean, it looks like that could be a long-term rebuilding project. That's got to help Alabama's chances.
Well, it does, but we talked about how he was a guy, Gary, that was a must-have for Tennessee, a little bit like Andre Smith was several years ago for Alabama. And if you look at it now, the way things are developing, he's starting to seemingly be more open to other schools, because there was a time when a lot of people thought he was a lock for Tennessee.
And real quickly, Rodney, in 10 seconds, a lot of talk about Clowney. You don't think he's coming?
My understanding is, Gary, that Jadeveon Clowney is going to the Clemson-Miami game. We'll see. He could show up here.
All right, good stuff as always from Rodney Orr on recruiting. All right, good stuff from you, we hope. If you want to get through with some good stuff, give us a phone call at 205-348-9882. Or you can email us if you'd like. We'll check those, TITV at WVUATV.com. But we do want to hear what's on your mind. You're watching Tider Insider TV. We'll be back in a couple of minutes, so don't you touch that dial.